The rain did not merely fall. It assaulted the glass walls of the penthouse, a relentless, rhythmic drumming that seemed to mock the suffocating silence inside. Standing before the floor-to-ceiling mirror, Elena traced the line of her jaw with a trembling finger, her reflection staring back like a stranger ghost. The emerald silk of her gown clung to her frame, heavy and cold, a beautiful armor constructed to withstand a war she hadn't realized she was fighting until tonight. Behind her, the room was a cavern of shadows and minimalist Italian furniture, a testament to wealth that felt less like a home and more like a museum exhibit. The only source of warmth, or perhaps just the illusion of it, came from the vanity lights, casting a harsh interrogation room glare on her pale skin. She applied the final coat of crimson lipstick, the motion mechanical, a soldier painting on war paint. "Are you ready? We're already late." The voice sliced through the atmosphere, devoid of affection, sharp as a scalpel. Elena didn't turn immediately. She watched Julian in the mirror as he adjusted his cufflinks. He was a portrait of devastating elegance in his bespoke tuxedo, the very image of the architectural titan the city worshipped. But in the reflection, his eyes didn't find hers. They were fixed on his own watch, calculating minutes as if they were currency he couldn't afford to waste on her. It had been 6 months since he had truly looked at her, really looked at her, without that veil of impatience. 6 months of cold dinners, empty conversations about charity galas, and the growing, gnawing suspicion that she was no longer his wife, but merely an accessory to be worn at public functions. "I'm ready," she whispered, the words tasting like ash. Julian finally looked up, his gaze sweeping over her with the clinical appraisal of an auctioneer. "Good. The emerald works. It matches the company branding for tonight's launch. Not 'you look beautiful,' not 'I missed you,' just branding." He turned on his heel, the click of his dress shoes on the marble floor echoing the widening distance between them. "The car is waiting. Don't forget the smile, Elena. The press will be vultures tonight." The elevator ride down was a study in claustrophobia. The mirrored walls multiplied their estrangement, showing infinite reflections of a couple standing inches apart, yet separated by an ocean of unspoken grievances. Elena watched the floor numbers descend, 50, 49, 48, feeling a corresponding drop in her stomach. Tonight was the pinnacle gala, the night Julian would announce the merger that would cement his legacy. It was supposed to be their victory lap. Instead, it felt like a funeral march. She reached out, her fingers brushing against the back of his hand, a desperate, instinctual plea for connection. He didn't flinch, but he didn't weave his fingers through hers either. He simply checked his phone, the screen illuminating his face in a ghostly blue light. "Stock prices are holding," he muttered to no one. Elena pulled her hand back, curling it into a fist at her side, her nails digging into her palm until the sharp pain grounded her. When the heavy oak doors of the lobby opened, the world exploded into chaos. Even through the tinted windows of the waiting limousine, the flashes of the paparazzi were blinding, a strobe light storm of white lightning. The doorman held the umbrella, but the humidity of the storm rushed in as they slid into the leather interior of the car. The city blurred past the rain-streaked windows, a smear of neon reds and yellows. Elena leaned her head against the cool glass, the vibration of the engine humming against her temple. "Julian," she started, her voice barely audible over the drumming rain. "About last night." "Not now, Elena," he cut her off, not looking up from his tablet. His face was a mask of concentration. "I have to memorize the opening remarks. The board is looking for any sign of weakness. If I stumble tonight, everything we've built, everything I've built, goes under. Everything you've built." The correction hung in the air, heavy and toxic. She remembered the nights in their cramped apartment 10 years ago, her brewing cheap coffee while he sketched blueprints on napkins, her editing his proposals until her eyes burned, her salary paying the rent while he chased this dream. "We," she corrected softly, though she knew he wasn't listening. "We built it." He didn't respond. The silence stretched, filled only by the swish of wipers and the distant siren of a police car. It was in this silence that the memory hit her, a sharp, jagged flashback to 3 days ago. The vibration of a phone left on the kitchen counter. A message flashing on the screen, innocuous to anyone else, but devastating to her. The skylight view is better from here. Miss you. It was sent from a number she didn't recognize, but the context was unmistakable. The skylight was the signature feature of the new penthouse project Julian was working on. A project he claimed was off-limits to everyone. Everyone except, apparently, the sender. She had shoved the memory down, buried it under layers of denial, but tonight, in the cold leather tomb of the limousine, it resurfaced with suffocating clarity. The car slowed. They had arrived. The Pinnacle Hotel loomed above them, a fortress of light and stone. The red carpet was protected by a white canopy, but the energy was frenetic. Security guards held back the screaming throngs of reporters. As the driver opened the door, the noise rushed in, a roar of voices shouting Julian's name. "Showtime," Julian said. The transformation was instantaneous and terrifying. The cold, distant husband vanished, replaced by the charismatic, beaming CEO. He grabbed her hand, his grip firm and possessive, pulling her out into the flashing lights. Elena stepped onto the red carpet. The smile she had practiced plastering itself onto her face felt like a mask that was too tight, threatening to crack. "Elena! Elena! Look here. Who are you wearing?" "Julian, is the rumor about the Asian expansion true?" The questions overlapped into a meaningless cacophony. She felt the heat of the lights on her skin, blinding and disorienting. Through the glare, she saw them. The society elites, the sharks in tuxedos and gowns, watching them with hungry eyes. They were the golden couple, the envy of the city. If only they knew that the hand holding hers felt as cold as a corpse. They moved through the gauntlet and into the ballroom, a space of breathtaking opulence. Crystal chandeliers the size of small cars dripped from the ceiling, casting prisms of light across the dance floor. An orchestra played something sweeping and classical, fighting a losing battle against the roar of conversation and the clinking of champagne flutes. Julian immediately released her hand, his eyes scanning the room for targets. "Get a drink. Mingle with the wives," he commanded, his tone low. "I need to find the senator. Don't wait for me." Before she could object, he was gone, swallowed by a sea of black suits. Elena stood alone near a pillar wrapped in white roses, feeling small and utterly exposed. She grabbed a flute of champagne from a passing waiter, not to drink, but to have something to hold. She watched him across the room. He was charming, animated, laughing at a joke the senator made. He looked alive in a way he never did at home. And then she saw her. Standing near the edge of the senator's circle was a woman in a dress of liquid silver. She was young, sharp-featured, with eyes that looked like they could cut glass. She wasn't looking at the senator. She was looking at Julian. And for a fleeting, terrifying second, Julian looked back. It wasn't a look of business. It was a look of shared intimacy, a microscopic lowering of guards that shouted louder than a scream. The woman raised her glass slightly, a toast only he could see. Julian's hand went to his tie, a nervous tick Elena knew intimately. The breath left Elena's lungs. It was the woman from the project site photos. She just knew it. The intuition was a physical blow to the chest. Elena turned away, bile rising in her throat. She needed air. She needed to escape the perfume, the lies, the suffocating grandeur. She pushed through the crowd, murmuring apologies, heading toward the terrace doors. She burst out into the cool night air, the heavy velvet curtains swinging shut behind her, muffling the music. The terrace was empty, slick with rain, overlooking the sprawling grid of the city below. The wind whipped her hair across her face, stinging her eyes, but the pain was grounding. She gripped the stone railing, her knuckles white. She looked down at the city lights, blurring through her tears. This was the view they had dreamed of, and now that they were here, standing at the summit, she had never felt more like falling. "It's a long way down," a voice said from the shadows. Elena jumped, spinning around, her hand flying to her chest. A man was leaning against the brick wall in the darkest corner of the terrace. He stepped into the dim light of the lanterns. He was older than Julian, with salt and pepper hair and a face etched with lines of cynicism and perhaps a hint of tragedy. He wore a tuxedo that was expensive but worn with a disregard for fashion. The tie undone, a cigarette unlit in his hand. "I didn't know anyone was out here," Elena managed, wiping her cheek quickly. "That's usually the point of coming out here," the stranger said, his voice gravelly but not unkind. "To be where the sharks aren't." He gestured with the unlit cigarette toward the ballroom doors. "You're Julian's wife, Elena, right?" "I am," she said, straightening her spine, the automatic defense mechanism kicking in. "And you are?" "Someone who knows that the merger Julian is announcing tonight is built on a foundation of sand," the man said, his eyes locking onto hers. There was no malice in his tone, just a weary factualness. "And someone who saw the way he looked at his vice president of operations in there, the woman in silver." Elena felt the blood drain from her face. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Don't you?" He stepped closer, tossing the cigarette over the railing. It disappeared into the wet abyss below. "You're smart, Elena. I've read your old architectural critiques. You were the brain behind the initial designs, weren't you? Before you became the trophy." The word stung, but the accuracy of it was what hurt. "Who are you?" she demanded, her voice shaking. "My name is Elias Thorne," he said. "I used to be Julian's partner, before he erased me from the company history." He leaned against the railing, looking at her with an intensity that made her want to run and stay at the same time. "I'm not here to ruin his night, Elena. I'm here because I know what he's planning to do next. And I think you deserve to know before the applause starts." Elena looked back at the closed curtains. She could hear the muffled sound of applause beginning. The announcement was starting. Julian would be on stage, smiling, lying, holding the hand of the future while crushing the past. She looked back at Elias. The rain began to fall harder, soaking her dress, ruining the perfect hair, washing away the facade. "What is he planning?" she whispered. Elias checked his watch, then looked at her with a grim expression. "He's not just merging companies tonight, Elena. He's liquidating the assets held in your joint trust. By the time the market opens tomorrow, you won't just be a divorced wife. You'll be destitute. He's cleaning house." The world tilted. The cold rain felt suddenly like ice water in her veins. It wasn't just an affair. It was an erasure. He wasn't just leaving her. He was destroying her. "Why tell me?" she asked, her voice trembling with a mix of rage and terror. "Because," Elias said, offering her his umbrella as the skies truly opened up, "I believe in balance, and I think it's time the architect took back her blueprints." Inside, the music swelled to a crescendo. Outside, in the storm, Elena stared at the umbrella, then at the man offering it. She looked at the ballroom doors one last time. She could go back in, play the part, and hope he was lying. Or she could take the umbrella and step into the unknown. She reached out and took the handle. Her hand was steady now. The fear had evaporated, replaced by a cold, hard clarity, the same clarity she used to have when correcting structural flaws in a design. Julian had made a mistake. He had assumed she was just a load-bearing wall, silent and stationary. He forgot that she was the one who knew where all the weak points were. "Tell me everything," Elena said, her eyes dark and dangerous as the storm. The umbrella Elias held was heavy, a black canopy against the deluge, but it did little to stop the cold from seeping into Elena's bones. The transition from the golden, overheated atmosphere of the ballroom to the raw, biting reality of the storm was violent. Behind her, the muffled strains of the orchestra and the murmur of 1,000 lies faded, replaced by the guttural roar of thunder rolling over the cityscape. Her heels clicked on the wet pavement, a fragile staccato rhythm against the relentless downpour, as Elias guided her toward a matte black vintage Jaguar parked in the shadows of the service entrance. It was a car that belonged to a different era, heavy and mechanical, a stark contrast to the silent, computerized limousines Julian preferred. Elias opened the passenger door, the hinge groaning slightly, a sound that felt honest in a night filled with artifice. Elena slid into the leather seat. The interior smelled of old tobacco, peppermint, and rain, a scent that was masculine and grounding. As Elias rounded the car and slid into the driver's seat, the heavy thud of the door closing sealed them in a private capsule. The silence was sudden and absolute, save for the rain drumming on the roof. He didn't start the engine immediately. Instead, he reached into the back seat and pulled out a thick wool coat, tossing it gently into her lap. "Put that on," he said, his voice rough but devoid of the condescension she was used to. Hypothermia isn't a good look for a strategist. She draped the coat over her soaked evening gown, the rough fabric scratching against the delicate silk, but the warmth was instantaneous. "Where are we going?" she asked, her voice sounding steadier than she felt. "Somewhere safe. Somewhere off the grid," Elias replied, turning the key. The engine roared to life with a visceral growl, vibrating through the floorboards. "If Julian's security team sees you leave with me, they'll intercept us before we hit the highway. We need to disappear for an hour." He pulled out into the traffic, not toward the affluent suburbs where the mansions stood like fortresses, but toward the industrial district, the old heart of the city that the new money tried to forget. Elena watched the city blur past the rain-streaked window. The neon signs of 24-hour diners and pawn shops smeared into long ribbons of light, looking like open wounds in the night. She felt a strange dissociation, as if she were watching a movie of her own life. The woman who had walked into that gala an hour ago, the perfect, obedient wife, felt like a stranger, a ghost left behind on the red carpet. "You said he's liquidating everything," Elena said, breaking the silence. She didn't look at him. She kept her eyes fixed on the rhythmic swipe of the windshield wipers. "The trust, the accounts. How do you know?" Elias reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a flash drive, placing it on the dashboard. It glinted under the passing streetlights. "Because I built the backdoor he's using to do it. Years ago, before he forced me out, we set up a contingency fund structure. It was meant for emergencies, hostile takeovers, market crashes. It allows for the rapid movement of assets into offshore shell companies without immediate regulatory flags. It was my code. He's repurposed it." He shifted gears, the car accelerating smoothly through a yellow light. He triggered the protocol at 6 p.m. tonight. By the time the gala ends, the joint accounts will be empty. The merger he's announcing isn't an expansion, Elena. It's a cannibalization. He's selling off the core assets of the company to a holding firm owned by, well, let's just say the woman in the silver dress has a very wealthy father. Elena felt the air leave her lungs. It wasn't just betrayal. It was a carefully architectural demolition. Julian hadn't just stopped loving her. He had been systematically deconstructing their life while she was busy choosing tile samples for the kitchen. "The woman," Elena whispered. "Her name is Isabel. Isabel Sterling," Elias corrected. "Vice President of Operations. And the new face of the company once you're out of the picture. Julian isn't just leaving you, Elena. He's rewriting the narrative. In his version, you're the unstable, spending-prone wife who drove the company to the brink, forcing him to make hard choices. He plays the martyr, you play the villain. It's a classic Julian move. Control the optics, control the reality." The car swerved sharply, turning down a narrow alleyway lined with brick warehouses. They came to a halt in front of a heavy steel door with peeling green paint. "We're here," Elias said, killing the engine. They exited the car, rushing through the rain into the building. Elias unlocked the door with a physical key. No keypads, no biometrics, and ushered her inside. The space was a converted loft, vast and cluttered. It was a chaotic library of blueprints, servers humming in the corner, and walls covered in timelines and photos. It smelled of coffee and ozone. This was a war room. Elias walked to a large drafting table in the center of the room and swept aside a pile of takeout containers. He plugged the flash drive into a laptop connected to 3 large monitors. "Look," he commanded. Elena stepped forward, the oversized coat trailing behind her like a royal robe. The screens flickered to life, displaying streams of data, bank transfers, and legal documents. She watched the numbers scroll. Sums of money that represented 10 years of her life, vanishing into accounts in the Cayman Islands and Zurich. But as her eyes scanned the data, something shifted. The panic that had been clawing at her throat began to recede, replaced by a cold, familiar sensation. It was the feeling she used to get when she looked at a complex architectural problem, the clarity of seeing the structure beneath the facade. "He's moving the liquidity through the shell company Ethelgard," she noted, pointing at the screen. Her finger didn't tremble. "But he's routing it through the Singapore exchange to avoid the SEC triggers." Elias looked at her, surprised. "Yes, that's standard." "It is," Elena said, her eyes narrowing. "But he forgot something. The Ethelgard protocol requires dual authorization for transfers over 10 million if the account originated from the primary trust. He thinks he removed my authorization when he updated the bylaws last month." "He did," Elias said, typing furiously. "I saw the document. Your digital signature was revoked." "He revoked my current signature," Elena corrected, a ghost of a smile touching her lips, a smile that was not happy, but sharp and dangerous. "But the primary trust was built on the foundation of our original partnership agreement. The one we wrote 10 years ago. The one I coded myself when we were too poor to hire a lawyer or a programmer." She leaned over the keyboard, her presence commanding the room. "Julian thinks in facades, Elias. He cares about what the building looks like from the street. He forgets about the plumbing. He forgets the foundation." She reached out, her fingers hovering over the keys. "Can I?" Elias stepped back, gesturing for her to take the chair. Elena sat down, the silk of her dress pooling around the wheels of the office chair. She began to type. It had been years since she had engaged with the back end of the company's system, but her muscle memory remained. The rhythm of the keystrokes was aggressive, a percussion of reclamation. "He didn't erase you, Elias," she said softly as she worked. "He just painted over you, just like he tried to paint over me. He destroyed my reputation," Elias said, leaning against the desk, watching her with a newfound respect. "Accused me of embezzlement. The irony is rich, isn't it? I spent 5 years fighting lawsuits while he built his empire on my designs." "He never could draw hands," Elena murmured, her eyes darting across the code. "In his sketches, he always hid the hands in pockets. He couldn't handle the intricate details. He's doing the same thing here." She hit the enter key. A window popped up. "Access denied." "See," Elias sighed. "He's locked it down." "No," Elena said, her voice dropping an octave. "He locked the front door." She typed a string of characters. October 24th, 2014. That was the date we opened the first office. It was raining that day, too. She hit enter again. The screen flashed green. Root access granted. Legacy user. The room fell silent, save for the hum of the servers. Elias stared at the screen, then at Elena. "You still have root access." "He forgot the legacy system," Elena said, leaning back, her chest heaving slightly. "Because to him, the past is just dead weight. He doesn't think it has power." She looked at the transferring funds on the screen. The progress bar was at 80%. "I can't stop the transfer. If I try to cancel it, the system will alert him instantly. He'll cut the connection and we'll lose everything. So we just watch him steal it?" Elias asked, frustration bleeding into his voice. "No." Elena turned to him, the vanity lights of the screens reflecting in her eyes, turning them into pools of electric blue. "We don't stop the flow. We redirect it." She pointed to a node on the network map. "Isabel Sterling. You said she's the new face? The accomplice? She's the signatory on the receiving accounts." "Perfect," Elena said. "Julian is arrogant. He trusts her because he thinks he controls her. He's moving the money to accounts she has access to, assuming she'll hold it for him until the divorce is final. But what if the money didn't go to the holding company? Where would it go?" Elena looked around the messy loft, at the evidence of Elias's broken career, and then down at her own hands, hands that had built a man who was now trying to destroy her. We create a loop. We divert the stream into a dormant escrow account. One that requires 3 keys to open. Is mine. And yours. Elias's eyebrows shot up. Mine? He'd never agree to that. He won't know, Elena said. I'm going to mask the diversion as a server latency error. By the time the money lands, it won't be in the Cayman Islands. It will be in a digital limbo that none of us can touch without the others. I'm freezing the assets. If he wants his money, he's going to have to look me in the eye and ask for it. She began typing again, faster this time. The progress bar on the screen continued to move, 85%. But beneath the surface, the destination code was being rewritten. It was a surgical strike. A silent heist committed from a dusty chair in a warehouse. Suddenly, a vibration buzzed against the metal table. Elena froze. Her phone, sitting next to the keyboard, lit up. The name on the screen was pulsing, bright and demanding, Julian. The room seemed to shrink. The ringing was a piercing intrusion. A lifeline back to the world she was systematically dismantling. He knows you're gone, Elias warned, his voice low. If you don't answer, he sends security to find you. If you do answer, you have to lie better than you've ever lied in your life. Elena stared at the phone. She could picture him perfectly. Standing in the hallway of the Pinnacle Hotel, impatient, checking his watch, annoyed that his accessory had wandered off. He expected her to be apologetic. He expected her to be afraid. She reached out, her hand hovering over the device. 90% transfer complete. She needed 2 more minutes to finish the redirection code. Elena, Elias said, tense. 2 minutes. Stall him. Elena picked up the phone. She didn't swipe to answer immediately. She took a breath, inhaling the scent of the rain and the stale coffee, letting the cold reality of the loft settle into her voice. She stripped away the fear. She stripped away the wife. She swiped the screen and held the phone to her ear. Where the hell are you? Julian's voice barked, tight with suppressed rage. The senator is asking for us. We have a photo op in 5 minutes. Elena watched the cursor blink on the screen. She typed a command with one hand. Initiate sequence. I'm looking at the view, Julian, she said, her voice eerily calm. It wasn't the voice of the woman in the emerald dress. It was the voice of the architect inspecting a demolition site. The view? What are you talking about? Get back to the ballroom. Now. It's beautiful from up here, she continued, watching the transfer destination switch from Cayman_Holdings to escrow_774. You can see everything. The cracks in the pavement. The storm coming in. The things we tried to hide. Elena, have you been drinking? You sound delusional. No, Julian, she whispered, her finger hovering over the final execute button. I've never been more sober. She pressed the button. On the screen, the text flashed. Redirect successful. Assets frozen. I'm not coming back to the ballroom, Julian, she said, the satisfaction cold and heavy in her chest. What? You can't just leave. The announcement. The announcement is happening, she interrupted. But the script has changed. Elena, if you walk out on me tonight, don't bother coming home. I mean it. I know, she said. I left my keys on the dresser. Oh, and Julian? What? He snapped. Check your bank account. She hung up before he could respond. She tossed the phone onto the desk and looked at Elias. He was staring at her, a mixture of shock and admiration on his face. You just declared war on the most powerful man in the city, Elias said. Elena stood up, the wool coat sliding off her shoulders to reveal the emerald silk beneath, now wrinkled but vibrant in the harsh monitor light. She walked to the window, looking out at the rain which was finally beginning to slow. No, Elena said, her reflection in the glass looking back at her. Fierce, broken, and alive. I just reminded him who built the castle. She turned back to Elias. Now, we need to move. When he sees that balance hit 0, he won't send security. He'll send mercenaries. The phone on the metal desk didn't just sit there. It pulsed with a radioactive kind of silence, the screen finally going black as the call ended. severing the connection between the warehouse and the ballroom, between the underworld and the elite. For a moment, the only sound in the loft was the humming of the servers, a low electric drone that felt like the building holding its breath. Elena stared at the device, her heart hammering against her ribs not with fear, but with the adrenaline of a jumper who has just cleared the ledge and is waiting for the parachute to open. She had done it. She had stolen the king's gold right out from under his nose, and the rush was intoxicating. A sharp, metallic taste in her mouth that washed away months of passivity. 5 miles away, in the gilded cage of the Pinnacle Hotel, Julian stood frozen in the hallway, the phone still pressed to his ear, listening to the dial tone. The sound was a flat, monotone mockery of his carefully constructed reality. Around him, the gala was a blur of motion and noise, waiters balancing trays of champagne, frantic publicists whispering into headsets, the distant thunder of applause from the ballroom where he was due on stage in 3 minutes. He lowered the phone slowly, his movements robotic. His face was a mask of terrifying neutrality, but beneath the skin, a geological shift was occurring. He tapped the banking app on his screen again, refreshing the page with a manic, microscopic twitch of his thumb. Account balance, $0. Status, frozen/escrow. The numbers stared back at him, absolute and unyielding. It wasn't just a glitch. It was a surgical amputation. Mr. Sterling? The senator is ready for the photo op. A young assistant with a clipboard appeared at his elbow, breathless and eager. Julian turned to look at him. For a second, he didn't see a person. He saw an obstacle, something fragile that could be easily snapped. The violence in his eyes was so sudden, so cold, that the assistant took a faltering step back, his smile faltering. Julian blinked, and the mask slammed back into place. "Give me a moment," he said, his voice smooth, though it lacked its usual warmth. "I have a situation with security." He walked past the boy, heading not toward the ballroom, but toward a quiet alcove near the kitchen service entrance. He didn't call the bank. He didn't call his lawyers. He scrolled past their names to a number saved only as S. He waited 2 rings. "Problems?" A voice answered, rasping and textureless, like dry leaves scraping over concrete. "She has the codes," Julian said, staring at his reflection in the darkened window of a service door. He looked composed, but his knuckles were white as he gripped the phone. "She diverted the Ethelgard transfer. It's frozen. Your wife..." The voice on the other end sounded mildly amused, which only fueled the cold fire in Julian's gut. "The one you said was decoration? She had legacy access. I missed it," Julian admitted, the words tasting like bile. He hated admitting failure. "She's with Elias Thorne. I need you to find them, not the police. You. If she has the money, she has leverage. Do you want it recovered? Or do you want the problem removed?" Julian looked back toward the ballroom. He could hear the MC announcing his name. The applause was beginning, a wave of adoration for a man who effectively didn't exist anymore. "Recover the keys," Julian whispered, watching the kitchen doors swing open. "Then remove the problem. Both of them." He hung up, straightened his tie, and walked into the light, smiling as the flashbulbs erupted. A dead man walking into his own wake. Back in the loft, the air had turned brittle. Elias was moving with frantic energy, ripping hard drives out of the server banks and shoving them into a battered leather satchel. "We have to go. Now," he hissed, throwing a look at Elena, who was still standing by the desk. "You left the phone on." The GPS pinged the tower. "Julian's security isn't just guys in suits, Elena. He uses contractors, ex-military, mercenaries who don't worry about Miranda rights." Elena snapped out of her trance. She grabbed the phone. "Should I turn it off?" "No!" Elias shouted, lunging forward and snatching it from her hand. "If you turn it off, they know we're moving. Leave it on. Leave it here." He tossed it onto a pile of blueprints near the window. "Let them come for a signal that isn't moving. It buys us 20 minutes. He grabbed her arm, his grip bruising. "Come on." They burst out of the heavy steel door into the alleyway. The rain had stopped, leaving the city slick and shimmering, the puddles reflecting the distorted neon of the streetlights. Elias didn't head for the Jaguar. He walked right past it. Elias, the car, burned. He cut her off, walking briskly toward the chain-link fence at the end of the alley. It's registered to me. Traffic cams will pick up the license plate within 2 blocks. We walk. Elena looked at the beautiful vintage car, then at her own attire, the ruined emerald gown, the oversized wool coat, the heels that were already blistering her feet. She stripped off the shoes, leaving them on the wet asphalt next to a dumpster, and ran barefoot after him. The cold pavement was a shock, gritty and wet, but it made her feel awake in a way she hadn't been in years. They scrambled through a hole in the fence, emerging onto a side street lined with shuttered factories. "Where are we going?" Elena asked, matching his pace. "Subway," Elias said, checking his watch. "The red line runs all night. We need to get underground. The signals are weaker and the cameras are analog, harder to run facial recognition on in real time." They walked in silence for 10 minutes, sticking to the shadows. The city at night was a different beast than the one Elena viewed from the penthouse. It was loud, dirty, and alive. They reached the subway entrance, a gaping maw in the sidewalk breathing out stale, warm air. Elias swiped a card, pushing her through the turnstile. They descended into the tiled belly of the station. It was nearly empty, save for a sleeping homeless man and a group of teenagers laughing near the vending machines. The train arrived with a screech of metal on metal, a deafening sound that vibrated in Elena's teeth. They stepped into the rear car, collapsing onto the hard plastic seats. The doors hissed shut, and the train lurched forward, plunging them into the darkness of the tunnel. Elias leaned his head back against the window, closing his eyes. He looked exhausted, the lines on his face deeper under the harsh fluorescent lights of the train car. "You realize what you did, right?" he murmured, not opening his eyes. "You didn't just freeze his money. You humiliated him. Julian doesn't care about the cash as much as he cares about the control. You took his control." "He took my life," Elena said, her voice low. She pulled the wool coat tighter around her. "He took 10 years of my work, my ideas, and put his name on them. The money is just severance. It's not just severance. It's a death sentence." Elias opened his eyes, turning to look at her. "He won't negotiate, Elena. He can't. If the board finds out the assets are frozen, the merger collapses and he goes to prison for fraud. He has to kill us. That's the only play he has left." Elena looked at her reflection in the dark window opposite them. She looked wild, her hair frizzy from the humidity, her makeup smudged, but she didn't look scared. She looked calculating. "He can't kill us if we have the black box." Elias froze. "The what?" "The black box," Elena repeated, turning to him. "Julian is a narcissist. He doesn't just commit crimes, he documents them. He keeps trophies. Every bribe, every illegal permit, every doctored safety inspection. He keeps the originals. He calls it his insurance policy. If anyone ever tries to take him down, he takes everyone down with him." "And let me guess," Elias said, a cynical smile twisting his lips. "You know where it is." "I know it exists," Elena corrected. "I saw him put a ledger in a wall safe once 3 years ago, in the penthouse, but he moved it. After the remodel last year, he installed a panic room behind the library. Biometric access only. Retinal scan and voice print. It's in there." Elias laughed, a harsh, barking sound. "So, the plan is to break into a fortress, guarded by the highest-end security system in the city, which, by the way, I designed so I know it's unbreakable, and convince Julian to open the door for us?" "No," Elena said, her mind racing, connecting dots like structural beams. "We can't get in, but someone else can." "Who? The janitor?" "Isabel," Elena said. Elias stared at her as if she had lost her mind. "Isabel Sterling? The mistress? The woman who is currently helping him steal your fortune? You want to ask her for help?" "She's not a partner, Elias. She's a tool," Elena argued, her voice gaining intensity. "I saw the way he looked at her tonight. It wasn't love. It was ownership. And I saw her face when the senator asked her a question. She looked terrified. She's young. She's ambitious. And she has no idea what she's walked into. Julian uses people until they break, and then he replaces them. Isabel is just the current iteration of me. She's the enemy, Elena. She's the weak point, Elena insisted. Julian is arrogant. He thinks he has her completely under his spell. He won't hide the codes from her because he doesn't think she's smart enough to use them. If we can get to her, show her the truth. Show her that she's going to be the fall guy for the embezzlement. She might flip. It's suicide. Elias shook his head. We don't even know where she is. I do, Elena said. She reached into the pocket of the wool coat. It was empty, of course. She looked at Elias. Give me your phone. Elena. Give it to me. I know her handle. She posts everything on social media. She's addicted to the validation. If she's at the gala, she's posting. Reluctantly, Elias handed over his cracked smartphone. Elena navigated to the social media app, her fingers flying. She found Isabel's profile. Isabel_S_design. The latest story was posted 10 minutes ago. It wasn't a photo of the gala. It was a photo of a rainy window, a glass of scotch, and a caption. Waiting game. #Pinnacle #rainy nights. She's not at the party, Elena whispered, analyzing the reflection in the glass in the photo. Look at the reflection. That's not the ballroom. That's the Sky Lounge, the private bar on the 40th floor of the hotel. So she's alone, Elias mused, leaning in. She's waiting for him. Or she's hiding, Elena said. She tapped the message icon. I'm going to send her a DM. She'll show it to Julian. Not if I word it right. Elena typed carefully. He's not going to marry you, Isabel. He's going to frame you. The transfer to Ethelgard is in your name. When the SEC comes, it's your signature on the warrant. I can save you. Meet me at Union Station, Platform 9. 1 hour. Come alone or go to prison. She hit send before she could lose her nerve. Platform 9? Elias asked, raising an eyebrow. That's a dead end. It's the old mail train line. It's abandoned. Exactly, Elena said. If she brings security, we'll hear them coming a mile away. The acoustics are terrible for stealth. The train slowed, the conductor announcing Union Station. The doors hissed open, revealing a cavernous, Beaux-Arts cathedral of a station. It was late, and the grand hall was a vast expanse of marble and shadow, the footsteps of the few commuters echoing like gunshots. Elena and Elias moved quickly, avoiding the main concourse, slipping through a maintenance gate that Elias picked with a paperclip in under 10 seconds. They descended deeper, past the active platforms, down a rusted stairwell to the lower levels. The air here was colder, smelling of rust and damp earth. Platform 9 was a dimly lit stretch of concrete, lined with decommissioned tracks. A single flickering bulb cast long, dancing shadows against the water-stained walls. This is a trap, Elias muttered, pacing the length of the platform. We are sitting ducks here. It's the only way, Elena said, leaning against a pillar. She hugged her arms around herself, the cold finally penetrating the wool coat. If we don't get that black box, we spend the rest of our lives looking over our shoulders. Or worse, we end up in a ditch. Time stretched. 10 minutes. 20. The silence was heavy, amplified by the distant rumble of trains on the upper levels. Elena checked Elias's phone. Read, 11:42 p.m. She had seen the message. She's not coming, Elias said, checking his watch. It's been 50 minutes. We need to move. Julian probably has a tracer on us by now. Wait, Elena whispered. She held up a hand. From the darkness of the access tunnel, there was a sound. Not the heavy bootfalls of security guards. The sharp, rhythmic click of heels. Click, click, click. Elias pulled a small, heavy wrench from his satchel, the only weapon he had. He pushed Elena behind him. Stay back, he warned. The figure emerged from the shadows. It was a woman in a silver dress, wrapped in a trench coat that looked too big for her. Her blonde hair, usually perfect, was plastered to her forehead with rain. She was trembling visibly. It was Isabel. She stopped 10 feet away, her eyes darting around the empty platform, terrified. She spotted them and froze. "Did you come alone?" Elias barked, his voice echoing in the gloom. Isabel nodded frantically, her hands raised in surrender. She was clutching a small clutch bag so tightly her knuckles were white. I think so. I took the service elevator. I went out the back." "Did you tell him?" Elena stepped out from behind Elias, her voice calm but commanding. "No," Isabel choked out, a sob breaking through. "I was scared. I saw the transfer notification on my phone. Billions. And my name was on the bottom." "Why is my name on the bottom?" She looked at Elena, her eyes pleading. "You said he was framing me. Is it true?" "He's setting up a fall guy," Elena said, walking slowly toward her. "He always does. You're the shield, Isabel. When the audit hits, he'll claim you manipulated the accounts without his knowledge. You're the vice president of operations. It's your jurisdiction." Isabel let out a whimpering sound, her legs giving way. She sank onto a rusted bench, burying her face in her hands. "He told me he loved me. He told me we were going to Paris next week. Paris is non-extradition for financial crimes if you have the right lawyers," Elias noted dryly, lowering the wrench but not putting it away. "He was going to leave you there. We can help you," Elena said, crouching down in front of the younger woman. "But we need the black box, the panic room. Can you get us in?" Isabel looked up, mascara running down her cheeks. "The panic room? I don't have the retinal scan. Only he does. But you have access to the house," Elena pressed. "You can get us to the door. Elias can bypass the lock if we can get physical access to the panel." Isabel hesitated, biting her lip. He's still at the hotel. He said he had to meet someone. A man named Silas." Elias stiffened. "Silas? You heard him say Silas?" "Yes. Why?" Elias grabbed Elena's arm, his face draining of color. "We have to go. Now, Silas isn't a banker. He's a cleaner. If Julian called Silas, he's not looking to arrest us." "Wait," Isabel said, her eyes widening as she looked past them, toward the tunnel entrance they had just come from. "Who is that?" Elena spun around. At the far end of the platform, silhouetted against the dim light of the stairwell, stood a man. He wasn't wearing a security uniform. He wore a charcoal gray raincoat and a flat cap. He stood perfectly still, watching them. He held no umbrella, yet he didn't seem to mind the damp. "Run," Elias whispered. The word barely formed before the man raised a hand. A suppressed phut sound echoed through the station, and a chunk of concrete exploded from the pillar inches from Elena's head. "Run!" Elias screamed, shoving Elena and Isabel toward the tracks. They scrambled off the platform, plunging into the darkness of the tunnel as a second shot whizzed past, sparking against the rails. The hunter had arrived, and the negotiation was over. The darkness of the tunnel was not simply an absence of light. It was a physical weight, a suffocating blanket of soot, stale air, and the metallic tang of high-voltage electricity. Elena ran blindly, her bare feet slapping against the grime-coated concrete sleepers, the vibration of the shot still ringing in her ears like a tinnitus of terror. Ahead of her, Elias was a shadow cutting through shadows, his flashlight beams slicing the gloom in erratic, frantic arcs. Behind her, the rhythmic click-click-click of Isabel's heels had vanished, replaced by the sound of ragged breathing and the tearing of silk. "Keep moving," Elias hissed, his voice bouncing off the curved walls of the tube, distorting into a demonic growl. "Stay off the rails. The third rail is live." Elena didn't need the warning. She could feel the hum of the power lines running parallel to them, a lethal river of energy waiting for a single misstep. She glanced back. The platform light was a distant, fading star. In that dim glow, she saw the silhouette of Silas. He wasn't running. He was walking with a terrifying, predator-like patience, stepping over the debris with practiced ease. He raised his arm again. A muzzle flash illuminated the tunnel for a split second. A strobe light of death, followed instantly by the crack of a bullet chipping the concrete inches from Elena's shoulder. Stone fragments sprayed her cheek, stinging like angry hornets. "Isabel, move!" Elena screamed, grabbing the younger woman's arm. Isabel was lagging, stumbling. Her trench coat caught on a rusted maintenance bolt. She was paralyzed, her eyes wide and white in the darkness, staring back at the man who had come to kill them. "I can't," Isabel sobbed, her voice high and thin. "I can't. My shoe." "Forget the damn shoe." Elena yanked her forward with a strength she didn't know she possessed. The fabric of Isabel's coat tore with a loud rip, freeing her. Isabel stumbled, falling to her knees on the sharp gravel. Elias stopped, spinning around, the flashlight beam hitting them. "Get up. He has night vision. We're glowing targets to him." Elena grabbed Isabel's face, forcing her to look away from the approaching darkness and into her own eyes. "Listen to me," Elena commanded, her voice cutting through the panic. "Julian sent him to erase you. If you stay here, you are just a loose end being tied up. If you run, you survive. Do you understand? Get up." Something in Elena's voice, perhaps the sheer, raw authority of it, snapped the wire in Isabel's brain. The girl nodded, frantic and jerky. She kicked off her heels, leaving the expensive designer shoes in the mud, and stood up on trembling legs. Okay, go." Elena pushed her. They scrambled deeper into the dark. The tunnel began to curve, blocking the direct line of sight from the platform. Elias led them into a narrow service alcove, barely a fissure in the wall. "Here," he grunted, forcing a rusted lever down. A heavy iron door groaned, protesting decades of disuse, and swung open just enough for them to squeeze through. They tumbled into a maintenance shaft, Elias slamming the door shut behind them and jamming the wrench through the handle to wedge it. Seconds later, a heavy thud vibrated against the metal. Then another. Silas was there. He wasn't shooting, he was testing the door. "He'll blow the hinges," Elias whispered, sweat dripping from his nose. "We have 3 minutes before he gets through." "Where does this go?" Elena asked, looking up. The shaft was vertical, a rusted ladder disappearing into a column of gloom. "Storm drains," Elias said, already climbing. "Old New York. The infrastructure beneath the infrastructure. Julian knows the penthouses. He doesn't know the sewers. Move." The climb was a nightmare of endurance. The rungs were slick with condensation and slime. Elena could hear Isabel whimpering below her, her breath coming in short, panicked gasps, but she kept climbing. Above them, the air began to change, shifting from the stale, dead air of the subway to something wetter, colder, smelling of rain and rot. They emerged through a manhole cover into a back alley miles from Union Station. The city was silent, the storm having passed, leaving behind a thick, low-hanging fog that wrapped around the streetlights like gauze. They collapsed onto the wet pavement, gasping for air, their lungs burning. Elena looked at the trio they formed. Elias, smeared with grease and looking every bit the fugitive. Herself, barefoot and in a ruined gown that cost more than a car. And Isabel, the silver dress torn, her hair a rat's nest, shivering violently as the adrenaline crash hit her. "We can't stay here," Elias said, standing up and scanning the street. "He'll track the subway exit points. He'll deduce the radius." "We need a safe house," Elena said, wringing out the hem of her dress. "Somewhere with no cameras, no digital footprint." "My loft is burned," Elias said grimly, "and your penthouse is obviously out." "I know a place," Elena said. She looked up at the skyline, orienting herself. They were in the meatpacking district, but on the edge where the gentrification hadn't quite taken hold yet. 6 blocks east, the Obsidian Tower. Elias looked at her, confused. The Obsidian? That project was scrapped 5 years ago. It's just a steel skeleton. "Exactly," Elena said, a grim smile touching her lips. "Julian canceled the funding because he said the design was too aggressive." He fired the security team and left it to rot. It's a dead zone. No power, no cameras, no sensors. It's a ghost. Isabel looked up, her teeth chattering. We're going to hide in a construction site? We're going to hide in my failed ambition, Elena said, pulling Isabel to her feet. Come on. The obsidian tower loomed out of the fog like the ribcage of a leviathan. It was 30 stories of steel girders and half-installed glass panels, wrapped in torn plastic sheeting that flapped in the wind like a dying flag. A chain-link fence surrounded it, but Elena knew exactly where the weak point was. She had come here often in the months after the project was killed, just to sit in the wreckage and mourn. She led them to the loading dock where the gate was secured only by a padlock that she knew was rusted through. Elias smashed it with the wrench in one strike. They ascended the concrete stairs to the 10th floor, a level that had been partially enclosed with glass but never finished. The wind howled through the gaps, but it was dry. The floor was a vast expanse of raw concrete, littered with pallets of drywall and abandoned tools. The view of the city was breathtaking and jagged, framing the illuminated spire of the Pinnacle Hotel in the distance like a taunt. Isabel collapsed onto a stack of drywall sheets, pulling her knees to her chest. She looked small, broken, a doll discarded by a careless child. Elena walked to the edge of the floor, looking out at the city. The wind whipped her hair, drying the sweat on her skin. She felt a strange clarity settling over her, the same cold precision she had felt in the loft. He's not going to stop, Isabel whispered into the silence. He's going to find us. He knows everyone. He owns everyone. Elena turned. He doesn't own us. He owns me, Isabel shouted, the sudden anger cracking her voice. You don't understand. My apartment, my car, my accounts. Everything is tied to the company. I don't have anything that isn't his. I don't even have my own phone anymore. She threw the clutch bag onto the floor. I'm just an extension of his will. That's all I ever was. Elena walked over and sat next to her. She reached out and took Isabel's cold hand. I know, she said softly. I was you 10 years ago. I thought his control was protection. I thought his jealousy was passion. I let him sign the checks. I let him pick the houses. I let him rewrite my designs until I couldn't recognize my own work. Why did you stay? Isabel asked, looking at Elena with wide, tear-filled eyes. Because I thought I was building a life? Elena said, looking over at Elias, who was busy rigging a portable work light to a battery pack he'd found. I didn't realize I was just building his pedestal. The light flickered on, casting long, harsh shadows across the concrete. Elias walked over, his face grim. We need a plan. We can't hide here forever. Eventually, Silas will widen the search grid. We have maybe 12 hours before he starts checking abandoned properties owned by the shell corporations. We have the money, Elias continued. Or at least we have it held hostage. We could negotiate. No negotiation, Elena said sharply. You heard Silas on the phone. Julian wants the problem removed. If we give him the money back, he kills us to tie up the loose ends. If we keep the money, he kills us to get it back. The only way out is to destroy him. Destroy him how? Elias asked, leaning against a steel beam. You froze the assets, but that's temporary. His lawyers will petition the offshore banks. They'll claim hacking. Without proof of his intent, without the paper trail, he wins. We need the black box, Elena said, returning to the obsession that had driven them underground. The ledger, the physical proof of the bribes, the safety violations, the embezzlement structure. If we give that to the FBI, he doesn't just lose his money. He goes to federal prison for life. The board dissolves the company. His power evaporates. Isabel sat up straighter, wiping her face. But I told you, it's in the panic room. Behind the library. It requires a retinal scan and a voice print. And a physical key. I have the physical key, Isabel added, her voice trembling slightly. She reached into her bra and pulled out a small, intricate titanium key on a thin silver chain. He gave it to me last week. He said it was for safekeeping. I didn't know what it opened. Elias stared at the key. He gave the mistress the key to his destruction. That's reckless, even for Julian. It's not reckless. It's arrogance, Elena said. He keeps the parts separated. The biometric lock is him. The physical key is Isabel. The digital code was me until I froze it. He thinks no single person can take him down because no single person has all the pieces. He designed his life like a nuclear silo. Two-man rule. So we have the key, Elias said, pacing. But we still don't have the biometrics. We can't drag Julian to the panic room and force him to open it. Silas is guarding him. Elena stood up and walked to the edge of the building again, staring at the Pinnacle Hotel. The answer was there, glowing in the night. It was so obvious, so poetic, that she almost laughed. We don't need Julian, Elena said, turning back to them. The work light caught the fire in her eyes. We need his data. What do you mean? Isabel asked. 3 years ago, Elena began, her mind assembling the heist like a blueprint. Julian installed a state-of-the-art security system at the Pinnacle Hotel. Not the penthouse, the hotel itself. For the VIP suites. It was a beta test for a keyless entry system based on biometrics. He wanted to market it to other luxury developers. Elias's eyes widened. I remember that. The sovereign system. It failed the user acceptance testing. It failed because people found it invasive, Elena corrected. But the server is still there, in the hotel's sub-basement. Julian was the primary test subject. To calibrate the system, he had to upload high-resolution scans of his retinas and hours of voice samples. The system needed a master template to compare against. And he never deleted it? Elias asked, skeptical. Julian never deletes anything that contains him, Elena said. He thinks his data is holy scripture. The server is offline, disconnected from the web, but the hard drives are physically there, in the server room of the Pinnacle Hotel. Wait! Isabel stood up, her torn dress swirling around her legs. You want to go back? To the hotel? Tonight? It's the last place he'll look, Elena said. He thinks we're running for the border. He thinks we're scared. He won't expect us to walk right back into the lion's den. It's a fortress tonight, Elias argued. Security is everywhere. The gala is still winding down. Silas will be close. The gala is our cover, Elena countered. Chaos is good. Drunk guests, catering staff moving in and out, paparazzi. It's noise. We can hide in the noise. She looked at Isabel. You know the service corridors? The ones the maids use? Yes. Isabel nodded slowly. I used them tonight to escape. Can you get us to the sub-basement without crossing the main lobby? Isabel took a deep breath. She looked at the key in her hand, then at the bruised, barefoot woman who was staring at her with an intensity that made her feel, for the first time, like she had a choice. Yes, I can get us in. Elias? Elena turned to him. If we get you to the server room, can you extract the biometric template and spoof the panic room lock? Elias rubbed his face with his grimy hands. He looked at the impossible skyscraper in the distance, then at Elena. He grinned, a sharp, jagged expression. If you get me to that server, I can make the door sing an aria in Julian's voice. But we need to get past the digital perimeter. The hotel has silent alarms on the server room doors. I can handle the alarms, Elena said. I designed the layout. I know where the blind spots in the wiring are. This is insane, Elias said. We're going to break into a hotel hosting the mayor and the senator, steal the owner's face and eyes, and then break into his penthouse to steal his confession. And we have to do it before sunrise, Elena added, looking at the eastern horizon where the sky was just beginning to bruise with purple light. Once the banks open, his lawyers might find a loophole. We need that ledger tonight. Elena walked over to a pile of abandoned construction gear. She found a heavy canvas drop cloth and ripped it. She began to wrap her bleeding feet, tying the fabric tight like a soldier binding wounds. Isabel, Elena said, standing up and testing the makeshift shoes, fix your hair. You need to look like you belong there if we get stopped. Elias, grab your tools. We're going to a party. The wind howled through the steel skeleton of the obsidian tower, but inside, the atmosphere had shifted. The fear had crystallized into purpose. They weren't fugitives anymore. They were a team. Isabel used a shard of glass to cut the hem of her dress, turning the ruined gown into a short, edgy cocktail dress. She wiped the mascara from her cheeks, using spit and determination. She looked at Elena. What happens if we get caught? Elena looked at the city, her gaze fixing on the penthouse that sat atop the pinnacle like a crown. If we get caught, Elena said, we make sure we scream loud enough that the whole world hears us. She walked to the stairs, not looking back. Let's go take back what's ours. The transition from the skeletal, wind-battered ruins of the Obsidian Tower to the loading dock of the Pinnacle Hotel was a journey between two dead worlds. One that had never been born, and one that was slowly rotting from the inside out. The service entrance was a gaping mouth exhaling the chaotic sense of a gala in its death throes. Stale champagne, truffles, exhaust fumes, and the metallic tang of industrial dumpsters. Elena moved first, her feet bound in the canvas strips that were now gray with soot, stepping into the shadow of a delivery truck. Elias and Isabel followed, a triumvirate of ghosts slipping back into the castle they intended to haunt. Isabel took the lead as they reached the heavy double doors. Her demeanor shifted the moment her hand touched the handle. The terrified girl who had sobbed on the floor of a construction site vanished, replaced by a version of herself that was brittle but functional, a creature of habit engaging muscle memory. She swiped a keycard she had pulled from her bra, a backup service pass she kept for emergencies, though she had likely never imagined an emergency like this. The light blinked green, a cheerful electronic permission that felt obscenely easy. They slipped inside, and the noise hit them like a physical wave. The kitchen was a war zone of stainless steel and steam. It was the breakdown hour. The gala was winding down, and the staff was in a frenzy of cleanup. Shout of corner, and hot behind, cut through the clatter of thousands of porcelain plates being stacked. Elena kept her head down, pulling the collar of the oversized wool coat up to hide her face. She felt exposed, a foreign object in a perfectly calibrated machine. She knew this hotel. She had looked at the blueprints 1,000 times. But she had never walked through the veins of it like this, smelling the sweat of the people who kept Julian's world turning. Walk fast, Isabel whispered, not looking back. Act like you're angry. No one stops you if you look like you're about to fire someone. They weaved through the labyrinth of prep tables. A sous chef, red-faced and shouting at a dishwasher, glanced their way. His eyes lingered on Elias's grime-streaked tuxedo and the tool bag, then flicked to Elena's strange footwear. Elena's heart hammered against her ribs, a frantic bird trapped in a cage. She locked eyes with the man, channeling every ounce of the imperious architect she used to be, the woman who could condemn a wall with a single glare. The chef hesitated, then turned back to the dishwasher, screaming about silverware. They were invisible again, shielded by the sheer audacity of their presence. Isabel led them to a service elevator at the far end of the kitchen, tucked behind a tower of empty crates. She pressed the button, and the doors groaned open, revealing a scarred metal box that smelled of bleach and garbage. As the doors slid shut, cutting off the roar of the kitchen, the silence that followed was heavy and vibrating. Sub-basement, Elena said, her voice tight. Level B3, that's where the server farm is. Elias hit the button. The elevator descended with a lurch. You're sure the legacy servers are still online? He asked, checking the battery level on his tablet. If Julian migrated the data to the cloud, we're walking into a dead end. He didn't migrate it, Elena said, staring at the floor numbers changing. B1, B2. The sovereign system was a hardline prototype. He was paranoid about cloud security back then. He wanted the biometric data kept on a closed loop. It's there. The elevator dinged at B3. The doors opened onto a corridor that was the antithesis of the chaotic kitchen above. It was sterile, white, and humming with the low, throbbing drone of high-voltage cooling systems. The air was frigid, instantly chilling the sweat on their skin. This was the brain of the building. Server room is at the end of the hall, Elena said, stepping out. Room 304. But there's a pressure plate alarm under the floor mat and a silent magnetic trigger on the doorframe. Standard Julian, Elias muttered. Overkill. They moved down the hall, their footsteps swallowing the silence. When they reached the door, Elias knelt, pulling a fiber optic cable and a small decoder from his bag. Elena knelt beside him. Don't touch the frame, she warned. I need to bypass the circuit. She reached into Elias's bag and pulled out a pair of insulated wire cutters and a thin strip of conductive tape. She looked at the door frame. She didn't see wood and steel. She saw the schematic she had drawn 3 years ago. She knew exactly where the conduit ran. With surgical precision, she used the tip of the cutters to pry off a small maintenance panel near the floor. Inside, a nest of wires pulsed. The red one is the alarm, she whispered. The yellow is the failsafe. If I cut the red without bridging the yellow, the silent alarm trips in the security office. Then don't miss, Elias said, his eyes glued to his decoder screen as he tried to brute force the digital keypad. Elena's hand trembled slightly. She took a breath, holding it in her lungs, steadying her heart rate. She was the architect. She built this. She could unbuild it. She slid the conductive tape behind the yellow wire, creating a bridge to the grounding screw, then snapped the red wire. Nothing happened. No sirens. No flashing lights. Circuit bypassed. She exhaled. And, I'm in, Elias said. The keypad beeped, and the heavy door clicked unlocked. They slipped inside. The room was a cathedral of technology. Rows of black server racks towering to the ceiling, blinking with thousands of blue and green lights. The noise was deafening here, a wind tunnel of cooling fans. Elias moved immediately to the third rack on the left, labeled Project Sovereign Archive. He plugged his tablet directly into the terminal. Okay, Elias shouted over the fan noise, his fingers flying across the virtual keyboard. I'm scrubbing the drive for the master template. Julian Sterling. Retinal scan. Voice print. Come on. Elena and Isabel stood guard at the door, watching the hallway through the small reinforced window. Minutes stretched into eternities. Elena checked her watch. 1:15 a.m. The gala would be effectively over. Julian would be heading up to the penthouse soon, if he wasn't there already. Got it. Elias cried out. High-res retinal map and 40 minutes of voice data. I'm compiling the spoof now. He tapped the screen. I'm syncing it to your phone, Elena. It will use the phone's IR blaster to project the retinal pattern and the speaker to modulate the voice key. Let's go, Elena said, turning to the door. Wait, Isabel gasped, pulling Elena back. Look, Elena looked through the window. At the far end of the hallway, the elevator doors were opening. 2 figures stepped out. They wore the dark gray tactical uniforms of the hotel's private response team. They weren't walking casually. They had weapons drawn, moving with a sweep and clear precision. They know, Isabel whispered, terror choking her voice. The silent alarm triggered. I bypassed it. Elena hissed. Maybe the bypass worked, but the door opening didn't, Elias said, packing his gear frantically. Or they saw the elevator usage. It doesn't matter. We're trapped. No, Elena said, her eyes scanning the room. We're not. She pointed to the ceiling. The HVAC vent. The cooling system for the servers has to vent the hot air somewhere. It goes straight up the central shaft. You want to crawl through a ventilation duct? Elias looked at the narrow grate. This isn't a movie, Elena. We won't fit. It's an industrial return, Elena argued, grabbing a chair and dragging it to the wall. It's 2 feet wide. It's tight but will fit. It exits on the mezzanine level behind the ballroom. The guards were getting closer. They could hear their boots on the linoleum. Check the doors. Clear. Elias scrambled up onto the chair, unscrewing the grate with his multi-tool. Clattered to the floor. Go, he hissed. Isabel went first, Elias boosting her up. She wriggled into the dark, dusty throat of the building. Elena followed, the metal scraping her bare arms. Elias vaulted up last, pulling the grate back into place just as the server room door burst open below them. "Clear!" a voice shouted. "Check the racks." They froze in the darkness of the shaft, holding their breath. The dust burned Elena's throat. Below them, the flashlight beams danced across the floor, missing the vent by inches. "Nothing here," the guard said. "Must have been a glitch. Sensor malfunction." "Roger that. Resetting the alarm. Let's move to the generator room." The door closed. The lock clicked. Elena let out a breath she felt she had been holding for an hour. "Up," she whispered. "We climb." The crawl was grueling. The metal was cold and vibrated with the building's pulse. They dragged themselves upward, inch by painful inch, until they saw light filtering through a grate ahead. Isabel kicked it open, and they tumbled out onto the plush carpet of the mezzanine hallway, behind the heavy velvet curtains of the ballroom balcony. They were covered in gray dust, looking like statues brought to life. Below them, the ballroom was a sea of debris. Empty tables, confetti, and the last few stragglers swaying to a jazz trio. But they weren't looking at the party. They were looking at the bank of glass elevators across the atrium. The elevators that led to the penthouse. "We can't go up like this," Isabel said, brushing dust from her torn dress. "We look like monsters." "We don't need to look good," Elena said, standing up and wiping the grime from her face. "We just need to be fast." They ran along the mezzanine, keeping to the shadows, until they reached the private elevator bank, the one reserved for the penthouse. This was the first hurdle. It required a keycard. Isabel patted her chest. She still had the service card, but this was a resident elevator. "It won't work," Isabel said. "Service cards are locked out of the penthouse lift after midnight." Elena looked at the panel. "Elias? I can't hack this one," Elias said, shaking his head. "It's hardwired to the security desk. If I tamper with it, Silas comes running." Just then, the elevator pinged. The doors slid open. A couple stumbled out, laughing, holding champagne flutes. They were residents of the 40th floor, oblivious to the world. As they stepped out, Elena moved. She didn't think. She just reacted. She stuck her foot between the closing doors. The safety sensor tripped, and the doors bounced back open. "Get in," she commanded. They piled into the mirrored box. Elena hit the button for the 50th floor, the penthouse. The button didn't light up. Needed a key. "Damn it," Elias cursed. Elena looked at the panel. She closed her eyes, remembering the installation. There was an override code for the fire department. A manual sequence of button presses. Door open, door close, floor 1, door open. She punched the sequence rapidly. The panel blinked. The 50 button lit up red. The elevator surged upward. The sensation of speed was dizzying. They watched the floor numbers climb 30. "This is it," Elias said, pulling the tablet out. "Elena, get the phone ready. You have to aim the IR blaster right at the sensor eye." Elena pulled out her phone. Her hand was steady now. The fear had burned away, leaving only a cold, hard resolve. She was about to face him, the man who had taken everything. The elevator slowed. The doors opened directly into the penthouse foyer. It was silent. The lights were dimmed to a low, ambient gold. The floor-to-ceiling windows revealed the storm-cleared sky, the moon hanging huge and white over the city. It was breathtakingly beautiful, a temple of wealth and power. "The panic room is through the library," Isabel whispered, pointing to the left. They moved silently across the marble floor. Elena felt a ghost of a memory. Walking this floor in her socks, drinking coffee, laughing. Felt like a memory from someone else's life. They reached the library. The bookshelf on the far wall was the door. Next to it, concealed behind a painting that had been swung aside, was the scanner. "Ready?" Elena asked. Elias nodded. "Do it." Elena held the phone up to the retinal scanner. She pressed the play button on the app Elias had built. The phone emitted a faint red pulse. Scanning. The automated voice was soft, feminine. Then, she held the phone to the microphone panel. Elias tapped the screen. The recording of Julian's voice, synthesized and reassembled, spoke the passphrase. Architecture is the will of an epic translated into space. There was a pause, a heartbeat of silence. Access granted. A heavy mechanical thud echoed from within the wall. The bookshelf groaned and swung inward, revealing a steel corridor bathed in harsh blue light. The panic room. We did it, Isabel breathed, her eyes wide. Not yet, Elena said. We get the ledger, then we leave. She stepped into the corridor. Elias and Isabel followed. At the end of the short hall was the heavy blast door of the inner sanctum. It was already open. Elena frowned. It's open. Maybe he left it open? Isabel suggested hope. They stepped through the doorway into the room. It wasn't a vault. It was a comfortable study, lined with screens, a leather armchair, and a wall of safes. And sitting in the armchair, facing the door, was Julian. He wasn't surprised. He wasn't panicked. He was wearing a fresh tuxedo, holding a tumbler of amber liquid, his legs crossed casually. Standing in the shadows behind him, a silent sentinel, was Silas, holding a suppressed pistol with a casual familiarity. The door behind them, the blast door they had just walked through, slammed shut with a sound like a guillotine dropping. The locks engaged with a series of heavy, finalizing clanks. Elena froze. The phone in her hand felt suddenly heavy, useless. Julian took a sip of his drink, the ice clinking softly in the silence. He looked at Elias, then at Isabel, and finally settled his gaze on Elena. His eyes were cold, amused, and utterly victorious. I was wondering when you would remember the sovereign beta test, Elena, Julian said, his voice smooth as silk. I saw the access log on the server room door bypass. Sloppy wiring on the yellow circuit, by the way. You always did rush the details. You knew, Elena whispered. Of course I knew, Julian smiled, standing up and walking toward them. Did you really think you could break into my house, steal my data, and walk in here without me opening the door for you? He stopped inches from her. He smelled of expensive cologne and victory. I let you in, Elena, he said, leaning down to whisper in her ear, because it's so much easier to bury 3 bodies when they walk into the grave themselves. He straightened up and looked at Silas. Check them for the recording devices, then open the airlock. Elena looked around the room. There were no windows, one door, and it was locked. They were in a steel box, buried in the sky, with a man who had just sentenced them to death. But as Julian turned his back to pour another drink, Elena's hand brushed against her pocket. She felt the cold metal of the titanium key Isabel had given her. The physical key. Julian had the biometrics. She had the spoof. But the safes on the wall. They needed a physical key. And Julian didn't know Isabel had given it to her. Julian, Elena said, her voice surprisingly steady. He turned, raising an eyebrow. Any last words? Please make them original. You're right. I rushed the details, Elena said, her fingers curling around the key in her pocket. But you forgot one thing about this panic room. And what is that? I designed the ventilation, she said, and then the lights went out. The darkness was instantaneous and absolute. A physical weight that slammed down upon the room, erasing the luxury, the arrogance, and the triumphant smile on Julian's face in a single heartbeat. It wasn't just a loss of light. It was a total sensory deprivation, the kind of heavy, suffocating blackness that exists only deep underground or inside the vaults of the very paranoid. For a fraction of a second, the silence held, a vacuum created by shock, before the chaos rushed in to fill the void. Silas, the door. Julian's voice cracked through the dark, stripped of its smooth veneer, pitching up into raw panic. Elena didn't wait. She didn't freeze. While Julian was reacting to the loss of his sight, she was reacting to the architecture of the room she had memorized from the blueprints years ago. She dropped to her knees, the marble floor cold and hard against her bruised skin, and scrambled to the right. She counted the movements in her head, 3 meters to the wall, chest height, the mahogany panel. She could hear the heavy, frantic footsteps of Silas moving toward the door, the rustle of synthetic fabric, and then the terrifying, deafening crack thump of a suppressed gunshot fired blindly into the gloom. The bullet shattered a vase somewhere to her left, sending shards of porcelain skittering across the floor like ice. "Don't shoot, you idiot. You'll hit the pressure seal," Julian screamed. Elena reached the wall. Her fingers scrabbled frantically over the smooth wood paneling until she felt the microscopic seam she knew was there. This wasn't just a panic room. It was a machine, and every machine had a manual override. She found the latch and pressed. A small panel sprang open. Inside, her fingers brushed against the cold steel face of the hidden wall safe. "Elias!" she screamed, her voice tearing at her throat. "Keep him busy. I'm on him." Elias grunted from the center of the room. There was a sickening sound of flesh impacting meat, a heavy thud, and the clatter of the gun sliding across the floor. Elias had tackled Silas. The sounds of their struggle were visceral and wet, grunts of exertion. The tearing of a suit jacket, the heavy breathing of two men fighting for their lives in a pitch-black box. Isabel was screaming somewhere near the entrance, a high, thin sound of pure terror. "Quiet!" Elena hissed to herself. She needed focus. She pressed the titanium key Isabel had given her into the lock of the wall safe. It slid in with a smooth, oily resistance. She turned it. Click. The sound was tiny, but in the acoustic chamber of the steel room, it sounded like a hammer strike. "She's at the safe," Julian roared. "Silas, forget the hacker. Get her." Elena yanked the safe door open. Her hand plunged into the dark cavity. It wasn't empty. Her fingers closed around the cool, textured leather of a thick binder and the hard plastic of a portable hard drive. The black box, the ledger of sins. The weight of it in her hand was heavier than she expected, the physical manifestation of 10 years of lies. She pulled it out, clutching it to her chest. But as she turned to move, a hand grabbed her ankle. The grip was iron. "Julian, give it to me," he snarled, his voice right next to her ear, feral and desperate. He yanked her leg, and Elena slammed onto the floor, the breath driven from her lungs. The ledger skidded away into the dark. "No!" she gasped, kicking out blindly. Her heel connected with something soft, a face, and Julian cursed, his grip loosening just enough for her to scramble away. "Isabel!" Elena shouted into the void. "The panel by the door, the red lever. Pull it." I can't see it," Isabel sobbed. "Feel for it. Waist height. Pull it." Elena crawled frantically, sweeping her hands across the floor, searching for the book. Her fingers brushed the spine of the ledger. She grabbed it, rolling onto her back just as a beam of light sliced through the darkness. Silas had found his tactical flashlight. The beam was blinding, cutting through the dust motes like a laser. It swept across the room, illuminating the carnage. Elias lying dazed on the floor with blood running down his forehead, Isabel cowering in the corner, and Julian standing over Elena, his face twisted into a mask of pure, unadulterated rage. He looked less like a titan of industry and more like a cornered animal. Silas raised the flashlight in one hand and a combat knife in the other, stepping over Elias's prone form. "End it," Julian commanded, breathless. "Don't take another step," Elena said. Her voice was surprisingly quiet. Julian laughed, a jagged, breathless sound. "Or what? You'll throw a book at us? Or I'll kill us all," Elena said. She raised her hand. She wasn't holding a weapon. She was holding the heavy glass cover she had ripped from the emergency environmental control panel on the wall behind her. Her other hand was hovering over a large, yellow button protected by a plastic guard. "That's the halon discharge," Elena said, her eyes locking with Julian's. "It's designed to extinguish electrical fires in the server banks. It sucks the oxygen out of the room in less than 20 seconds. If I press this, we all suffocate before the door can cycle open." Silas froze. He knew what halon did. He lowered the knife slightly. "You wouldn't," Julian sneered, though he took a half step back. "You don't have the guts. You're a builder, Elena, not a destroyer." "I was a builder," Elena corrected, her voice trembling not with fear, but with the sheer intensity of the moment. "But you taught me how to demolish things, Julian. You taught me that sometimes you have to tear it all down to the foundation." She pressed her thumb against the plastic guard. "Let Elias up. Let us walk out the door. Or we all die in this box together. And honestly, I'm okay with that. Because if I die, the ledger stays here, and your empire rots anyway." The silence stretched, taut as a piano wire. The only sound was the ragged breathing of 4 people and the hum of the flashlight. Julian stared at her. He searched her face for the weakness he had exploited for a decade. The desire to please, the fear of conflict, the softness. He didn't find it. He saw the woman who had climbed through a sewer, walked through a storm, and broken into a fortress. He saw the architect who had finally realized she was the one holding the hammer. "Stand down, Silas," Julian whispered. Silas hesitated, then lowered the knife. "Open the door," Elena commanded, nodding toward the keypad. "Elias, get up." Isabel grabbed the drive. Elias groaned, rolling onto his knees and staggering to his feet. He wiped the blood from his eyes, grabbing the hard drive Isabel had retrieved. He limped toward the door. Isabel followed, skirting the wall to avoid Julian, her eyes wide with a mixture of terror and awe as she looked at Elena. Julian walked to the door panel. He punched in a code. The heavy hydraulic hiss of the blast door disengaging filled the room. The steel slab swung open, revealing the dim light of the library beyond. "Go," Elena said to Elias and Isabel. "Get to the elevator." "Elena, come on," Elias urged, pausing at the threshold. "I'm right behind you." Elias and Isabel ran into the library. Elena stood up, clutching the ledger. She backed toward the door, keeping her hand near the halon panel until the last possible second. Julian watched her, his hands clenched into fists at his sides. "You'll never make it out of the building," Julian said, his voice low and poisonous. "I own the police. I own the press. You walk out with that book, and I will hunt you until there is nowhere left on earth you can hide." Elena paused at the doorway. She looked at the man she had married, the man she had loved. He looked small now, framed by the steel walls of his panic room, surrounded by his money and his secrets. He looked like a prisoner of his own making. "You don't own anything anymore, Julian," she said softly. "You're just a tenant, and the lease is up." She stepped through the doorway, and then she did the only thing that made sense. She slammed her hand onto the external control panel for the panic room. She hit the lockdown sequence. The blast door slammed shut with a final, thunderous boom. "No!" Julian's muffled scream echoed through the steel, followed by the sound of fists pounding against the metal. But it was useless. The room was designed to withstand a nuclear blast. It would certainly hold 2 men. Elena stood there for a second, staring at the closed door. The silence of the penthouse returned, peaceful and still. She let out a breath that felt like it carried the weight of 10 years. "Elena!" Elias shouted from the foyer. "We have to move. The override won't hold forever." She turned and ran. They sprinted through the penthouse, the marble blurring beneath their feet. They hit the elevator and Elias jammed the lobby button. As they descended, the adrenaline began to bleed out, replaced by a shaking exhaustion. Elias slumped against the mirrored wall, holding a handkerchief to his head. Isabel was crying silently, clutching the hard drive like a holy relic. But Elena didn't look down. She watched the floor numbers descend. She was thinking about the next step. "Not the lobby," Elena said suddenly. "We can't go out the front. The police will be swarming it by now." The silent alarms from the server room finally went through to the precinct. "Then where?" Elias asked. "The roof," Elena said. "The service stairs from the 40th floor lead to the helipad. We go up, not down." "We don't have a helicopter, Elena," Elias pointed out gently. "No," she said, "but we have a bridge." The elevator dinged at the 40th floor. They spilled out and ran for the service stairwell. They climbed, their lungs burning, their legs screaming in protest. up 10 flights of concrete stairs, until they reached the heavy fire door at the summit. Elena pushed it open and the world expanded. They were on the roof of the pinnacle. The storm had completely passed. To the east, the sky was bleeding into a bruised purple and soft gold. Dawn was breaking over the city. The air was crisp and clean, scrubbing the scent of stale air and fear from their skin. Sirens wailed far below, a symphony of red and blue lights converging on the hotel entrance. But up here it was quiet. The bridge, Isabel asked, looking around the empty helipad. Elena pointed to the adjacent building. It was an older skyscraper, slightly shorter, separated from the pinnacle by a gap of maybe 5 feet. Spanning that gap was a maintenance gantry, a narrow metal walkway used for window washers. It was precarious, swaying slightly in the wind, but it connected Julian's fortress to the rest of the world. "We cross," Elena said. They walked across the gantry, the city sprawling beneath them like a circuit board waking up. The wind whipped Elena's hair across her face, but she didn't flinch. She stepped onto the tar-papered roof of the neighboring building. Elias followed, then Isabel. They stood there for a moment, safe. The gap between the buildings felt like an ocean they had just crossed. Elias walked over to the edge of the roof and looked down at the chaos in front of the pinnacle. "Look," he said, pointing. SWAT teams were breaching the lobby. News vans were already pulling up. The world was waking up to the scandal of the decade. "It's over," Isabel whispered. She dropped the hard drive into Elena's hand. I don't know what to do now. I don't have anywhere to go." Elena looked at the young woman. The silver dress was ruined, her feet were bleeding, and her face was streaked with grime. But she was alive. "You have everywhere to go," Elena said. She handed the ledger to Elias. "Take this to the district attorney, not the police. Go straight to the federal building. Use your contacts." "What about you?" Elias asked, taking the book. "Where are you going?" Elena walked to the edge of the roof, looking out at the sunrise. The light was hitting the glass skeleton of the obsidian tower in the distance, the place where they had hidden, the place that was supposed to be her failure. In the morning light, it didn't look like a ruin. It looked like a beginning. The steel beams were strong. The foundation was solid. It just needed a new design. "I have a lot of work to do," Elena said, a genuine smile touching her lips for the first time in years. "I have to rebuild, but this time I'm drawing the plans." Elias smiled. He reached out and squeezed her shoulder. "You're a hell of an architect, Elena." He turned and led Isabel toward the fire escape of the building, heading down to the street to finish the fight. Elena stayed on the roof for a moment longer. She looked back at the penthouse of the pinnacle one last time. She imagined Julian in the dark, screaming at the walls he had paid for, trapped in the cage of his own paranoia. She felt no anger anymore, only a profound, quiet pity. She turned her face to the sun. It was warm. She reached into her pocket and pulled out her phone. She dialed a number she hadn't called in years, her father's old landline in the country. "Hello?" A sleepy voice answered. "Dad?" Elena said, her voice breaking slightly, tears finally spilling over, hot and cleansing. "It's me. I'm coming home for a bit." "Elena?" The voice woke up, warm and steady. "Is everything okay?" Elena looked at the city, shining and vast and full of possibility. She took a deep breath, filling her lungs with the morning air. "Yes, Dad," she said. "Everything is finally okay. I needed to tear down a wall, but I'm ready to start building again." She hung up the phone and walked toward the stairs. She left the wool coat on the roof, a shed skin of the night. She walked down into the morning, barefoot and bruised, but walking with the steady, unbreakable stride of a woman who owns the ground beneath her feet.